Hi, my name is Seth Helgeson. I'm a solutions architect with IONOS Cloud, and today we are going to do an overview of how to move a hosted WordPress site from a shared solution to a dedicated instance within the IONOS Cloud environment. Before we get started on the step-by-step instructions on how to move your WordPress site, we first want to go through a couple of points on why you would move it. These can be narrowed down to a few key points. First off being performance. In a dedicated environment that you get with the IONOS Cloud side, your performance can be much better than a shared VPS solution. Also on the IONOS Cloud side of things, you have the flexibility to increase or decrease your resources as you should need them and only pay as you go as you're doing that. Secondly, from a functionality standpoint, you can start with a small single instance, test your site, and then expand your functions to things like firewalls, load balancing, private networks, and NAT gateways, which are all included within the IONOS environment. And finally, the drag and drop interface of the IONOS DCD allows you to quickly and easily build out your WordPress environment without any additional special skills needed. I've broken out how we're going to migrate our WordPress site into 4 simple areas. Our first area is going to be building out our new WordPress server, and we're going to do this on the IONOS Cloud side of things using a WordPress install script that we're taking from the IONOS Labs GitHub site. Next, once that WordPress site is up and running, we're going to install the Updraft Plus WordPress plugin in order to do a backup of our source site. Then we're simply going to install that same plugin on our IONOS Cloud WordPress instance and perform a restore there. We're going to test that restore on the new WordPress server, and then once we're comfortable that everything is working correctly, we're going to change our DNS entries to point to our IONOS Cloud server. Today I'm going to be using a WordPress site that's currently hosted on our IONOS domain and hosting side. This WordPress site is a site called anywherecity.net, and simply we are going to use this as our source site and then restore this site to our cloud instance. So let's get started on the cloud side. In order to get started, we need to log into our DCD at dcd.ionos.com. Once you get to that screen, if you haven't already, click on the Start Free Trial to get a trial account. Once we've logged in, you'll see a list of our data centers, which are a virtual environment containing our server resources. We're going to start off by creating a new data center. We'll call this WordPress. This brings us to the DCD grid, where we can drag and drop our resources out into the grid in order to provision them. To create our environment, I'm going to drag a server out and give this server a name. We'll call this WordPress 1. Then I'm going to click on the plus sign and drag it to the internet icon in order to connect this server to the internet and give it a real IP address. Next, I'm going to click the HDD storage and bring that out to the server and give this storage a name. Next, I'm going to choose an image that we want to use on this server. In our case, we're going to use the latest version of Ubuntu. I'm going to set a password that will be assigned to the root user account. And I'm also going to assign an SSH key that I've already uploaded so I can get access to it later if I need to. Now, finally, in order to install WordPress, we are going to use the Cloud Init User Data function. And we are going to paste in there a Cloud Init script that we are getting from the IONOS Lab site here. We copy that to our clipboard, go back to our DCD, and within the configuration, we are going to paste this data. And simply what this data does is install a web server and goes out to the GitHub IONOS Labs repository and downloads the install script for WordPress. Once we have that, we click on Provision, we look for any errors, and now we watch the provisioning of the server. This should only take a couple minutes. Once this is done, we'll receive a message saying provisioning complete, and click OK on that. Now that that's complete, we want to watch the build process of WordPress on our server. And we can do this by right-clicking on the server and going to Console. Expand this, and then we're going to log in as root with the password we previously set. In order to watch what's being done on our server, we're going to use a simple Linux command called tail. This is going to look at what's being written out to this log file, and as it's going through it, we'll be able to see when our install is complete and also what random username and password has been assigned to it so that we can write that down. The WordPress install then goes through installing all the packages required for WordPress and then finally installs WordPress on top of those. The process can take a few minutes to complete, but in that time you can watch the packages as they get installed. Once the install is complete, the text will stop scrolling and you'll see a database name, user, and password along with the MySQL root password displayed below. Also, you'll see the output from the Cloud init script saying that it's finished. Make sure you write down that database name, user, password, and MySQL root password for future use. Now that our install is complete, we're going to close out the console screen. Next, we're going to select our instance again and go to the Network tab so that we can get the external IP address of this instance. We'll copy that IP address and we are going to simply paste this into our browser URL bar so that we can finish up the WordPress install in the browser. As you can see here in the browser, we're presented with the finished setup screen from WordPress. Here we're going to give the site a title, and we're also going to create an admin username and password. It's always a good idea to use the randomly generated password, copy that somewhere else and keep it safe. We'll enter our email address as it's required, and then we'll click on Install WordPress. Now we'll click Login to go to the backend WP admin section with the username and password that we previously created. And you'll be able to see that now we have our backend dashboard. In order to fully test our site before we move it over, we are going to create a DNS entry called test for this IP address. And we're going to do that by going to the IONOS domains and hosting side, where I'm already logged in, and click on My IONOS, and then go to Domains and SSL, and then for me, anywherecity.net, where I will then click on the DNS entry in order to add the new DNS. Here, I'm going to click on Add Record. It's going to be an A record. And my host name is going to be test. And I'm going to paste in the IP address of our cloud WordPress instance. And I will save that. Now that that record is saved, I'm going to go back to the admin dashboard of our new site. I'm going to go to Settings and General. And then I'm going to change that URL or IP address entry and put our new DNS entry of test.anywherecity.net. I'm also going to do this for the site URL. That way we can get to this site by name and test all of the functions after we restore it to make sure that everything is good. After we save those settings, we should go back to the test.anywhere.net WP admin login, and we know it's working when we get that login screen. Now we're going to go back to our source instance and go to the WP admin section and log in. For me, this is my account that I previously set up with IONOS Domains and Hosting. Here we're going to install the Updraft Plus plugin in order to back up our source site. And I'm going to go back to my admin section, go to Plugins, Add New, and I'm going to upload the plugin I just downloaded, as you can see here. This plugin should only take a couple seconds to install, and once it's been installed, we will click on the Activate button that you see at the bottom. Once that's activated, you'll see a line at the top for Updraft Plus, and we're going to go to Backup and Restore in order to do the backup of our site. Here I'm just going to click on Backup Now. I'm going to include everything and then click on the Backup Now button. Since this is a small site, it should only take a couple of seconds to do the backup. I'll click Close once the message is up that says it's complete. And then I'm going to download the backup file to my local computer by clicking on Database, Plugins, Themes, Uploads, and Others, and then clicking Download to your computer. After I've downloaded them all locally, I'm going to go back to my destination server and log into the WordPress admin section again. Here we're going to do the same install that we did on the source server for the Updraft Plus plugin. The only difference here is that after we do the plugin installation, we are going to log in to the Updraft Premium account in order to get the license to do the automatic migration as it brings the backup over. Now, after we logged into the premium side, we are going to activate the plugins on this site, which includes the migration plugin. After that's activated, we are going to go back to the backup and restore and upload the local files that we previously downloaded from the source site. Once those files are done uploading, we're going to go back to the top of the plugin to the Migrate Clone tab, where we are going to select Restore and then select the backup set that we just uploaded. We're going to select all of the pieces to be restored, and we are going to make sure that the checkbox is set to change the database. This is going to go through and restore the entire site. And once we get all green, we are going to go to our test.anywherecity.net URL to make sure that the site restored properly. Here we can see that that site restored. And once we're done testing the entire site, we can then go back to our IONOS domains and hosting side and change our production @ records and www records to point to the IP address of the site that we just created. And once we've changed those records, the last thing we need to do is change the site URL within WordPress to reflect anywherecity.net. Hopefully you found this information helpful, and please visit us at some of these links to get additional build information and new builds. Thanks.